Japan's Prime Minister and leader of the LDP, Shigeru Ishiba, has just stepped down and resigned. Now, why has he done this, and in particular, why has he chosen right now to resign? Well, in my mind, I think there are three main reasons. Now, the first main reason to my mind is that he's had a tough year or so as Prime Minister and leader of Japan, and in particular, two bad elections. And so I think that's why he's chosen now to step down and resign. Now, he came in as Prime Minister with the LDP having faced a couple of scandals and being in a bit of difficulty, and he came in as a sort of outsider reformer candidate, and he very quickly chose to have an election in 2024. And as a result of that election, he ended up losing the LDP, the majority in Japan's main house, the lower house, and lost some seats for the LDP. And so it was seen as a bit of a bad election, and he perhaps, in retrospect, might now regret calling it then. It wasn't a complete disaster at the time for him, and he was able to carry on because it was seen as mostly the LDP's unpopularity that had perhaps cost them the election more than Ishiba, and also many of the Abe faction, who Ishiba had criticised in the past and he was sort of coming in to replace. He's not a member of the Abe faction. They ended up losing their seats, some members of the Abe faction, and they were a bit discredited by the election results as well. So he was able to carry on after that. However, he then had further difficulties in office. Things like the rice crisis, the soaring price of rice, were difficult for Ishiba to deal with. And he had a difficulty, because he lost the LDP, their majority, getting budgets through and getting legislations through, and he had to sort of cut a lot of deals and work with other parties, and perhaps he didn't accomplish everything that he would have wanted to as a result of that. And also he faced a personal crisis, the gift crisis, because he gave out gifts to first-year lawmakers. Now, he denies any wrongdoing with that, but he was accused of acting improperly in doing so, and so he possibly had a bit of a loss of personal popularity as well because of that scandal. And so all of that has sort of damaged Ishiba. And then in 2025, he faced a second election in Japan's upper house, and again, as a result of that election, he lost the LDP's majority in the upper house as well, and so he had a second poor election result where he didn't get the target he would have wanted to, and he failed to keep the LDP in their majority in the upper house, and so that's another sort of negative result for Ishiba and another mark against him that's possibly led to him resigning. Now, a second reason he might have chosen to resign right now is the trade negotiations with Trump over a tariff deal. Now, this was very important for Ishiba, and he'd struggled to get it done over a period of time. He wanted badly this deal to sort of avoid a lot of uncertainty for Japan, avoid Japan being hit with the worst of the potential tariffs from Trump, and to just sort of create a more stable, economically less uncertain time for Japan, and just to get that behind them and just get the certainty of a deal out of the way. Now, he's just managed to negotiate that deal, so perhaps there's a big reason he didn't choose to resign until now was he wanted that achievement. He wanted to make things better for Japan by getting rid of that uncertainty. He wanted that as a positive mark on his track record in office, and he didn't want to disrupt the negotiations by leaving when they were half done, and then the new leader would have to come in, get to grips with the negotiation. They might have possibly stalled the negotiations as a result, or perhaps even halted, or it could have delayed it at the very least. And it would have perhaps been a negative remark against Ishiba if he'd left that job undone, and now he can claim that as a major accomplishment before he resigns and say, I stayed in office, managed to get negotiation done, and now I'm walking away on a positive note. And so he can sort of leave on a high in that respect. A third reason is that the day after Ishiba chose to resign, there was going to be a meeting of his party, the LDP, and they were possibly going to vote to have a leadership election within his party, which would have forced Ishiba out, or at the very least to suffer the indignity as the leader of the LDP in participating in a leadership election. And so effectively, perhaps he's jumped before he's pushed, he's left on his own terms, he's chosen to resign, and on a relative high, being able to claim he's got this tariff negotiation with the USA done, rather than being forced out. And so perhaps that's a big part of him also choosing to resign right now, and that might explain why Prime Minister Ishiba has chosen to go.